Hey guys, and welcome to another devlog video for the NPC Manager system. So I wanted to give you guys a quick update on what's going on and my plans going forward with the asset. I've actually submitted the NPC Manager to Epic. I believe it was Monday evening, and I was really hoping that it would have been approved. And today I will be making a video announcing that it's been finally published. But it's taken a little bit longer, which is fine. So what I've done in the past few evenings is just kind of look at my plan, and I've actually added a few additional features that I was planning to add in the 1.1 release. They're actually now added. So I think by now they're just going to be rolled into the 1.0 release. So when it finally releases, you guys will have these additional features that were not planned for the initial release. So the first one is a loot component. And this is very similar to the loot component in the animal behavior kit. If you have that, you probably have seen this. This is a slightly modified version of that component. I've actually changed the way I calculate the loot, and I've added a few additional things. But basically, just add this component comp underscore spawn loot, and then you have here a loot table, and I created 3 dummy classes, a coin, a cone, and a cube. And instead of adding a % chance to spawn to each one, you add a weight. So this is much more similar to the way that RPGs are made, or MMOs. If you have a really big loot table, for example, instead of adding a percentage, you add a weight. And that's just a flat number. And the higher the number, the more probability there is of this item to be spawned. And then I've added a spawn amount, and this is a minimum and a max, and of course this is an integer, right? So in this case, by default, it'll spawn either 1 or 2 items from the list, and it'll run the calculation again based on the weight. There's a spawn range, how far from the NPC, this is basically a radius, will the item spawn, and then whether you want the items to align to the ground or not. Very, very simple. So to test it, we can actually use this utility, or we can just kill the NPC. So we have these items, and we have to spawn between 1 and 2. And if we click on spawn loot, I'm gonna go to game mode. You can see that it just spawned this little cube here. And if we press again, now we spawn the coin. And if we press again, now we spawn this other coin. So it's very, very simple, but it just adds a little bit more to the game. If you want to have your NPC spawn loot, now you have the solution. And of course, this is fully replicated and works on a dedicated server, so obviously it has that option. If you wanted to spawn more than one item, let's just go crazy here between 1 and 10, and let's just actually hit play here. So say that we wanted to have an NPC really spawn a bunch of items. You can see that we killed the NPC, he just flew out, ragdolled, and you can see that we have a bunch of loot that just spawned. It's all aligned to the terrain. That's kind of why I have this little mountain terrain here, so you can see that it aligned. And again, it's a dummy class, nothing happens. It just rotates, and when you hover over, it just disappears. That's it. But it just kind of gives you an idea of how things work. And again, you can test it by this utility. You can see how it spawns there, so it's very easy to test. So yeah, there you go. So now you guys have a loot component for all of your NPCs, and because it's a separate component, you can use it pretty much for anything. It's super simple to add to your own custom class. So yeah, there you go. The next thing I wanted to add, and this is more I think useful for adding randomization. And let's just kind of fly over here to this guy. So the first thing is a random walk speed, and this is something, again, very simple, but it does add a nice little randomness to it. So if you go down to movement options, I've added a new walk speed range here, and by default it's gonna pick a random walk speed for this NPC on start between 200 and 300, and the default before was 200 because we want them to walk. But let's exaggerate this so we can see that it's actually working. It's gonna go between 50 and 800, and if we press play here, you see that this guy is, I don't want to say sprinting, but he's pretty much jogging now as he's walking around. And if we press play again, you see that now his speed has changed. Again, he picks a random speed every single time the game starts. And now this guy's picked a smaller speed. So obviously, I wouldn't do something like this, but ideally, even with the default, you're going to see slight differences in the way the NPCs walk, and that overall, by default, is going to give you guys a much nicer feel for your world, right? If you have a crowd in the town, not everybody walks at the same speed, so this is kind of a nice to have. So there's that, and then there is finally the random size, and this is under general settings. So we already had pick random name from a table. I've added another a section here called mesh scale range. Now by default is 1, so min and max, again same difference as before. Min 1 and 1, and this is a scale value, a multiplier. So by default this is turned off effectively, and that's because all the animations that I made with the props were made for that specific scale. But if you wanted to, if you want to change the animations, obviously you can change these values to whatever you want it. So for example, in this case, what I'm saying is I want the mesh to be a random size between 80% of its original size, 0.8, and 200% of its original size. And if I click play here, now you see that John is, I don't know, 7 foot tall, pretty tall. So then you can see that now we have variation, and yeah, and now he's a little bit smaller. There you go. So it's gonna pick a random value, and you can see that now it's a little bit smaller. So that's pretty much it. Very, very simple. Let's make this like 0.25. See if we can get some like tiny number here. Nope. Ah, there you go. Probably not the use case you're gonna be doing for your game, but the point is, it just scales it down to whatever number. And again, all of this works in multiplayer, which is nice. So yeah, those are the features that are coming. Again, these were planned for 1.1, I guess, and they're going to be rolled into the original release, so you guys have a little bit more extra stuff. I know this randomness is extra nice if you're planning for crowds and something like Archviz, and you know, and you can afford to make some small changes. There's one last thing that I wanted to ask you guys, and this is more about asking you guys for your feedback. If I let me show you what I mean real quick before we end the video. I am going to move these guys out of the way really quickly here. Whoops, not that, just these out of the way, and I want this guy to spawn one NPC here. Actually, we don't need to spawn an NPC. What we'll do here is we'll just change the profile, which is fine. One second, let me just show you. BOI 1. Here's an issue that I've been kind of thinking about how to solve, and maybe you guys can help me here. So if we have an NPC that goes into a station, like in this case the bed, I'm not happy the way the HUD appears. It's working as intended. It's rotating towards the player, so obviously you can see that the name is rotating, but it looks bad, right? This guy is supposedly sleeping, but the HUD looks really bad. So how do you fix that issue? If the NPC is upright, like working or talking, then that is perfectly fine. But if the NPC goes you know, horizontal like this, or in some kind of weird animation, then you can see that there's an issue obviously with the HUD. So I've thought about different ideas. Maybe have an option in the station to hide the HUD. So maybe in this case, like when the NPC goes to sleep, you can just tick a box and say, hey, just hide the HUD, for example. And then in game, when you go there and you see the NPC sleeping, you won't see the name. Another option will be to stop rotating the HUD, And that's an option that I've actually added, and that looks a little bit better. You see, I added this experiment in like rotate HUD. If you do that, it looks a little bit better, but is it really that much better, for example? I don't know. Oh, and I forgot to change the scale. Hold on, guys. Let's change the scale to something decent here. There we go. And this is, see that the HUD is not rotating. So the option would be to stop rotating the HUD only when it's in a specific station. So it would look like this. So you can still see his name and you can still see his health, but it's basically rotated forward. So that's a little bit better than the other option, but I'm not really sure if that's kind of what I want. So that's, I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I'm leaning towards just hiding it, but if you want the NPCs to show the name all the time, then that's not a good option for you. So what do you guys think? Any ideas would be greatly appreciated. Maybe I can roll that into the initial release as well, depending on how long Epic takes on approving. If you have any games where they solve this issue really nicely, please do let me know so I can check that out. So yeah, thank you guys. Hopefully you like the additional things that I've added. And yeah, do let me know if you have any good ideas for that issue with the HUD. Alright guys, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the next video.